You don't remember much of the walk back down the hill, only that your boots left no tracks in the frost, and the wind howled louder than the preacher's final words. The door slams behind you, not gently, not with mercy, but with a weight that tells you what your life is now: unblessed, unclaimed, unfit. The church bell above still chimes the hour of what should have been your redemption, but it tolls like a warning now, casting long shadows over the tiny village below. You don't dare look at the stained glass as you pass it, not after how they looked at you in there, like a scandal stitched together with pity and shame. You press one hand to your belly. The baby moves softly, a reminder, a consequence, a reason to keep walking. You don't cry, not yet. The frost has done something to your tears, kept them locked just behind the bone. They'll come later, maybe when it's safe, maybe when you find somewhere to sit, but there is nowhere now. Your husband's coffin hadn't even settled into the grave soil when they handed you the letter. Not condolences, not prayer. A dismissal. The elders said your marriage wasn't real, not sealed by their book, not in the eyes of the law. You remember the lace hem of your wedding dress peeking out from beneath the altar pew, darkened by mud, the kind of detail no one remembers but you, and you remember how they whispered, "She's no widow. She's just a mistake with a baby." You make it halfway down the trail before the pain hits, sharp and low, like a horse kick in your spine. You drop to your knees beside a dead cottonwood, breathing hard, clutching at frozen grass with fingers that can't hold anything anymore. You hear footsteps. At first you think it's another church deacon come to drag you from the grounds. Or worse, town boys who've heard stories and want to see if the shame fits. But it's a woman, old, bent, wrapped in wool, so faded it's gone to smoke. She doesn't speak, just crouches down and lays her hand on your shoulder, palm to collarbone. Her fingers smell of fennel and soot. "You're not going to make it to the crossroads," she says, like she's been watching you walk your whole life. Then she lifts your chin, not cruelly, and sees your eyes, and for a breath she softens. You'll be strong once the fire takes what it must. You don't know what she means. But the next thing you know, she's wrapping your baby, your just-born child, wet and howling, in a crumbling book with scorched corners. It smells like old debt and ash. You want to ask why, but your body gives out before your voice finds the air. When you wake, you're in a root cellar beneath the old tannery. The baby lies next to you, wrapped not in swaddling cloth but in pages, ledger pages, black ink melted into brown curls around the child's name, and beside the fire, rocking on a broken stool, the midwife hums a lullaby you don't recognize. "Only paper they never dared to finish burning," she says without looking at you. "Your baby sleeps in the ashes of their lives now." You blink, trying to sit up. "What's the book, yo?" you ask. "Who kept it?" She finally looks at you. Someone they feared more than they feared you. The wind shifts outside. A chimney moans. You hold your baby tighter. The ledger crinkles under your hand, and somewhere deep in your gut you know. This story isn't about being rejected anymore. It's about rewriting what they tried to erase. The cellar smells of pine ash, old blood, and something you can't quite name, like lightning struck too close. Your baby sleeps with lips parted, a flutter in his chest that mirrors your own panic, but it's the ledger you keep staring at. Every time you try to unfold it, a flake of blackened corner crumbles in your hand. "He won't choke on it," the midwife mutters, catching your glance. I only wrapped him in the covers. Covers. As if it were a blanket. As if pages full of inked names and numbers were cloth enough to keep a child warm through the first night of exile. You glance at the spine, or what's left of it. The burn ran deep, but not complete. Some entries remain, barely legible, written in the same hand you remember from your wedding contract. But there's more than that. Scribbles in another ink, rougher, angrier. Some names are crossed out, others are circled. One has a faint red X beside it, not beside your name, but beside his. You whisper it. Jonas? The midwife looks up then. Her eyes catch the light, like flint stone. You said his name like a vow, she says softly. You don't answer, because you remember the truth of it. How he'd brought you bread when your pantry was empty, how he fixed the chimney even after the church forbade him, how he'd traced your wrist with his thumb like he was afraid you might vanish if he pressed too hard. But they said his land claim was forged, said his debts were deep, said a man who'd bought old ledgers from a burned-out bank was trying to rewrite God, and now, this is all that's left of his fire, wrapped around your son. You rise shakily to your feet. I can't stay here. The midwife stirs something in the fire with a bent iron poker. Then where will you go? To his land, you say before thinking. If there's any left. She stops stirring. The church claimed it last spring, said it fell into default. You already knew that. But hearing it aloud seals the cold inside your ribs. Still, you're not going to let them bury him in words and ash. Then I'll take the boy, you say, and I'll go where no one can burn what's left. The midwife reaches behind the hearth, pulls out a sack, coarse wool tied with a strip of hide. Inside 4 small bundles, tallow, dried meat, 2 seed pouches marked with chalk, and a single tin canister of powdered willow bark. It's the kind of bundle someone makes when they expect a journey too long for hope. She hands it to you without ceremony. He'll need more than your arms, she says, nodding toward the baby. He'll need something from before, something only they fear. You don't understand what she means, not yet. But when she moves to the cradle, she tucks something else under the ledger, a flat piece of paper, folded 3 times, wax sealed, your name written on the outside in trembling ink. It smells like lavender and lye, and the seal bears the mark of the church. From the deacon's daughter, the midwife says, slipped it into my hand before they threw you out. You feel dizzy, like standing too close to truth. You don't open it, not yet, because you're already opening the cellar door. Snow falls sideways outside. You pull the shawl tighter, cradle the baby close, and step into the wind. Behind you, the midwife's voice follows low. Keep the ledger near the boy. It won't warm him, but it might keep him remembered. You don't answer. Your breath fogs in front of you, and somewhere down the slope, the road to nowhere waits. You take it anyway. Because you've got a baby wrapped in ink and ashes, and a letter from someone who wasn't supposed to care. The trail away from the village runs along the river like a scar. You follow it for hours, boots slipping on ice-slick roots, shoulders hunched against the wind. The baby sleeps, barely, wrapped tight in the ledger and a wool scrap the midwife had sewn from an old tobacco sack. Your fingers have gone numb, not from cold, from silence. You can still hear their voices in your mind, women who refused to meet your gaze after the church doors slammed, men who pretended your wedding never happened. Even the baker's wife, who used to give you cracked biscuits on Mondays, had turned her back when you cried out. And yet, The midwife had not. You remember her face when you were younger. She'd caught nearly half the village's children, though few spoke of it openly. Her house stood on the hill behind the tannery, half sunken, with bones strung across the doorway like charms. They said she was strange, said she came from the swamps, said her herbs did more than heal. But you remember being small, sitting on your mother's lap, and watching the midwife pour oil over your sister's burned foot. How she'd murmured, not in English, but in something older. How your sister's pain quieted by morning. Now here you are. One woman's discard, another woman's burden, and you can't shake the feeling that the ledger didn't survive by accident. You reach the fork in the trail by dusk. The river splits here, just like the map Jonas once carved into your memory during a thunderstorm, north to the trade post, west to his land. You choose west. It's only as the last light fades that you hear footsteps behind you, soft, bare, deliberate. You turn sharply, baby held tighter, every muscle screaming, but there's nothing, just snowflakes. Then a voice, low even. You walk as if you're hunted. You freeze. A figure steps from the tree line. Not young, not old, weathered like bark, long coat stitched with hide patches. A man. He carries no rifle, just a satchel and a gaze that doesn't blink. I don't mean harm, he says, raising one empty palm. I'm tracking wolves. They've been following the blood. Your stomach twists. You hadn't noticed the blood, but now that he says it, the baby had coughed. The ledger. One corner is damp. You shift him gently. He stirs, lets out a thin cry, weak like the edge of a dying whistle. The man looks at the book cradled against your child's skin. Where did you get that? He asks, tone different now. You don't answer. He doesn't push, but he doesn't leave either. Instead, he motions toward the cliffs to the west. There's a cave, dry, half a mile. You won't make it through night out here. You hesitate. Trust has become a luxury, but your baby's fingers are stiff. The wind is louder than your fear, so you nod. He walks ahead, never once checking if you follow, but he knows you will. And as you walk, you wonder, not who he is, but what it is about the burned ledger that made him look twice. The cave is narrower than expected, just wide enough for your shoulders. The man stoops, builds a small fire with dry moss and fat wood strips pulled from his satchel. The flames catch fast, crackling like bone under weight. You sit with your back to the stone wall, legs curled around the baby. The ledger lies open in your lap, as much for warmth as for revelation. He watches you from the other side of the flame, not unkind, but cautious, like a man who's been bitten once too often by trust. Name? He asks finally. You think he means yours. You answer softly. He shakes his head. The child's. Your throat tightens. You haven't said it out loud since Jonas died. Haven't dared. But the name comes anyway, like smoke through a cracked door. Elias. He nods. Then he points, not to the baby, but to the ledger. Turn to the 5th page, he says. You hesitate. Then obey. And there it is, the name. Elias Thomas Wainwright, written in that same looped cursive you remember from Jonas's journals, but next to it, a word you don't recognize. Suspendice. You look up. What does it mean? The man exhales through his nose, not quite a laugh. In the old records, he says, it meant unconfirmed, disputed, held in question. You stare at the page, the ink smeared from where it had been folded against the baby's cheek, and that red mark beside it. Bloodline claim, he says. Then he adds, after a pause, usually means the child is heir to a contested parcel or a deed someone once erased. You go still, that land, the one they said Jonas forfeited. He hadn't. He'd marked the child, marked him in a book meant to vanish. You feel your chest rise, your spine straighten. He was never just a laborer, never just a dreamer with bad luck and debts. He knew. And someone wanted this ledger gone to keep that from ever coming to light. The man leans forward. Where did you find it? You tell him. The cellar. The midwife. The fire that took the church records last year. How they said it was an accident, a candle left burning during storm vigil. He doesn't blink. I remember that fire, he says. Smelled like lies. The flames cast shadows up the cave wall. You glance at your baby. He's sleeping again, small fists pressed against the burned spine of the ledger. What do I do now? You whisper. The man doesn't answer right away. Instead, he reaches into his coat and pulls out a folded map, not inked, but cut. Small slices, patterns marked in threads, sewn directly onto hide. He lays it beside the fire, points to a valley marked with a circle and a notch. His name's written there, he says, on more than paper. You look down at Elias, then at the map, then back to the fire. In your gut, something clicks into place. This isn't about shame anymore. This is about land, legacy, and a name someone burned the world to bury. But they missed a page. They missed a child. And now they've missed you. You don't ask for his name. Something about him, his silence, the way he watches the cave's mouth even when speaking, makes the question feel intrusive, as if a name might shatter the fragile pact between you. But that doesn't stop you from wondering. When he sleeps, curled near the fire with his rifle cradled like a child, you study the small things, a faded tattoo on the inside of his wrist, stitch marks on his collar done by hand, not new but careful, a feather tucked into the back seam of his pack, not decorative, ceremonial. You've seen that kind before. When Jonas took you through the ridges last fall, past the outposts no one names, he'd spoken of the people who used to live where the rivers cross in triple forks, said their scouts still moved through the woods, unheard, untouched. Your companion might be one of them, or just someone who learned how to vanish well. Either way, he doesn't wear a last name, not like the men in the town with their gold-stamped deeds and boots that echo off saloon steps. You'd trust him more because of that. On the third day in the cave, Elias won't stop coughing. It's not fever, it's in his lungs, something tight, raw. He's breathing shallow. The cold air, the soot in the ledger paper the night you spent walking without pause. It's all catching up. Panic claws at you. Silent but sharp, you try everything. Onion poultice, steam, gentle pats. He grows quieter. Your fingers tremble. He needs heat, you say. He needs ground root, the man replies, already packing. You blink. That only grows near springs. He nods. There's one. 3 miles west. We'll go at first light. You glance at the map again. That valley. The one circled, marked with a notch. The one Jonas had once mentioned in passing. There is water there no map shows anymore. You shoulder the baby, who shudders under your hand, his breath fluttering like a torn leaf. The man pulls a small pouch from his coat, presses it into your hand. Crush this. Boil it. It'll keep him warm until we find the root. What is it? You ask. His answer, old, that's all. By dawn you're walking again. Snow falls gentle now, not cruel. The sky softened to gray, and beside you, This man who won't give a name but gives you everything else: warmth, direction, a fighting chance. At one point he stops, kneels by a patch of lichen. "See this, Shaita," he says, pointing. You nod. Only grows where soil was burned long ago. You look down. The whole ridge is dusted with it. "Fire?" you ask. He shakes his head. "Justice." The word sits with you a long while. When you reach the valley's edge, you smell water first, then steam, then an altar, not carved, grown. Stones placed by time or hand, you can't tell. A spring bubbles up through the earth, clear and slow, surrounded by yellow moss and crushed sage. He moves with reverence, not words. You wait while he harvests the root. The baby whimpers, his eyes barely open. You press the ledger against his chest like a second rib cage and whisper, "Stay." The man returns, hands you the wrapped root. "I'll build the fire. You make the tea." And just like that, you realize something. He may not have a last name, but he's building you a future anyway. The steam from the pot curls into the cave ceiling like a prayer too soft to be heard. You kneel beside it, grinding the last of the ground root into the boiling water, counting the seconds with the rhythm of Elias's shallow breaths. He's quieter now, not better, just quieter. A kind of stillness that terrifies you more than screaming ever could. The man watches from across the fire. He hasn't spoken since handing you the stone mortar. He doesn't need to. His eyes stay on the boy, like he's seen this kind of fight before and knows how close the edge is. You take the pot off the flame, let it cool to sippable, then soak a rag and dab it on Elias's lips. They're dry, cracked. You whisper lullabies as you work, old ones from your grandmother, words you'd forgotten until just now. When he finally swallows, you nearly collapse, but you don't. You stay with him all night, trading off with a man so neither of you sleeps too deep, and as dawn breaks he stirs, just once, but enough. You look at the man, your silent sentinel. He nods once, then rises and walks to the cave mouth, scanning the horizon. You follow him moments later, arms still wrapped around your child. The view nearly buckles your knees. Below the ridge lies a stretch of land you've never seen, marked on any map. Hills slope into a wide plain ringed by cottonwoods and flanked by stone formations shaped like weathered gates. And at the center, ruins, not recent, old wood, a collapsed well, a foundation burned half through, but still standing. It takes a beat before you recognize it, not from life, but from a sketch. Jonas had once drawn it on the back of a receipt, tracing his family's claim with a pencil nub. "This is where I was born," he had said, "but they stole it before I could walk." The man beside you finally speaks. "This is the place," he says, "where your boy's name is buried and where their fear began." You stare. The ledger in your satchel seems to hum with memory. "How do you know this?" you whisper. He kneels, scoops a handful of soil, presses it between his fingers, then looks up. "Because I was there the night they tried to burn it all." Your breath catches. "You knew Jonas." His jaw tightens. "I knew what he risked. I knew who paid him to stay quiet. And I knew, when they killed the last midwife who refused to hand over the deeds, they'd come for the book next." You stare at him. The ledger, the child. It was never about faith. It was about land. About bloodlines that wouldn't fold. You open the satchel, pull out the scorched ledger, turn to the page with Elias's name. Then slowly turn it upside down. Under the name, something glows faintly, ink that reacts to heat. A second line appears, a clause. Beneficiary to lot number 3, Ridge Valley, in perpetuity. Your fingers tremble. That's here, this place. Your boy isn't a burden. He's a claim, a living one. And now you understand why they turned you away. Not for shame, for fear, because your baby's birth meant their deeds were dust. Behind you, the man speaks again. We'll need to stay hidden till spring. Then we go to the county seat. You blink. They'll never let us register this. He holds your gaze. Then we don't ask. He taps the ledger. We prove it. You lift Elias closer. His cheeks are pink again. His fingers curl. You press your forehead to his and whisper the only vow that matters anymore. They'll remember your name, even if we have to write it in fire. The wind shifts that night, carries a scent you haven't smelled in weeks, oil, horses, smoke that isn't wood. You and the man, still nameless, still watching, lock eyes without speaking. You both know what it means. They're looking. Not for you exactly, for what you carry. The ledger's weight seems heavier now, though it hasn't grown. Just the knowledge inside it pressing harder against your ribs. You pack fast. The baby is swaddled in extra hides, the fire doused, ash scattered. Before dawn, you're moving. North this time, toward the borderlands, where no county line dares stretch too far, where old treaties blur and language shifts every mile. You pass through the canyon gulch Jonas once called the Bone Corridor, so narrow even whispers feel too loud. There the man finally stops. He kneels, pulls a small pouch from beneath a flat rock. Inside, cloth, ink, a carved stamp, not words, symbols, 2 birds, one broken, one flying. He presses it into your hand. What is it, you ask? He studies the stamp like a wound. It's what the old ones used before land was paper. He unfolds the cloth. Inside lies a worn, stitched square, hand-inked with the same symbol. He nods to the ledger. Sew this into the back cover. If the church finds you, that mark might still save the boy. Your fingers trace it. You can feel the thread work, coarse, uneven, but alive with history, a promise hidden in fabric. You sew it by the fire that night. Slow, careful stitches. The same way your mother once patched your only Sunday dress after it tore on the fence gate. The baby sleeps on your chest, warmed by your heartbeat. When the last stitch pulls tight, the man nods once. Silent approval, but peace is short. By the second moonrise, your trail is spotted, not by strangers, by someone you once trusted, the sheriff's wife. She doesn't speak to you, just stares through you while fetching water at the post. Later that night, a lantern flashes once from the ridge. The man sees it, and all softness drains from his face. They know now, he says. We can't turn back. You gather your things, your child, the cursed ledger, and just before leaving, you bury something, not the book, not a keepsake, but your name, because from now on, it's not safe to be who you were. You stitch a new one onto your pack, something simple, just 4 letters. But it's the baby's name that matters now. Elias, the child they couldn't erase. The fire they thought they'd smothered, still burning. The stars overhead don't blink. They just burn steady, cold, sharp, and too far to ask for help. You move like a shadow. Every branch underfoot feels like it might cry out. Behind you, the man glances back once, then disappears into the tree line to sweep your tracks. Elias whimpers. You rock him gently, pressing your chin to his head. He's growing heavier, which is good, but you can't afford to slow down. The ridge trail's too exposed. Moonlight paints you silver. You're one silhouette away from being a target. You crouch behind a split rock, catching your breath. The ledger, wrapped in oilskin, is lashed tight to your back. The stitched mark, 2 birds, rests just between your shoulder blades like a brand of defiance. That's when you hear it. Hoofbeats, not close, but coming. The man reappears beside you, suddenly, soundlessly. His face tells you enough. They've crossed the high ridge, he murmurs. 3 riders, 1 carries a torch. Your gut twists. Not cavalry, church riders, hired hands. You've heard the stories about how the elders send men with Bibles in one hand and warrants in the other. But the real weapon is always silence. They won't kill you. They'll take the child, burn the ledger, rewrite everything. Not tonight. The man hands you a satchel of coals wrapped in birch bark. Keep the baby close, he says. We'll split. I'll draw them east. You grab his sleeve. What if they don't follow? He looks down at Elias, then at you. Then I'll give them a reason. You don't argue. By the time you reach the southern slope, the torchlight has vanished into the trees, and all that's left is snow. You press onward until your legs forget they belong to you. At some point, you reach a stream so narrow you can step over it. Jonas once said water divides more than just land. It divides stories. Truth on one side, lies on the other. You cross. And it's there, just past the roots of a leaning cedar, that you find the place. Not a house, not a camp, just a hollow between stones, dry and shielded from wind. An owl stirs above, but makes no sound. You crawl inside. Lay Elias down beside you. The coal packet still glows faintly. You place it near his feet, layered in cloth, and you wait. Hours pass. Then, a noise. Not hoofbeats. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. The man returns. But something's different. His coat is torn. His cheek is bleeding. But he carries something. Not a weapon. A paper, folded, still warm from the fire. He hands it to you wordlessly. You open it. It's a church deed, signed, stamped, marked invalid. But someone tried to make it vanish in flame, just like the ledger. You stare at the corners, burned but not enough. Your child's name appears again, 3rd line down. And beside it, not a red mark, but a seal in wax, the bishop's. He reads it over your shoulder. They tried to kill the record, he says softly. But this one survived. You don't answer, just pull the ledger from your back. Lay both documents side by side, and breathe in the smoke that once tried to erase you. Let it fill your lungs. Let it remind you, you're still here. And so is his name. You don't sleep that night. Not because of fear, though there's plenty of it. Not even because of Elias, who rests quieter than he has in days. It's the ledger. Open on your lap, the scorched corners flake with every turn, but the ink, it still speaks. Jonas's handwriting winds through the pages. Names, debts, births, trades. But scattered between the formal entries, like hidden prayers, are margin notes, sentences not meant for anyone's eyes but his own. And yours. You read them aloud, barely above a whisper. She laughs like her mother used to. Elias kicked hard today. Feels like a wild colt already. I told the deacon he'd see fire before I sold this land. Then, halfway down a torn page, you find one more. Should I die before he's born, let this book prove him mine. Let the land carry his name. Let it carry hers too. Your hand covers your mouth. It's not the sentiment. It's the seal beside it, pressed deep into the parchment. Not wax, ink burned with ash. A tradition older than signatures, bloodline ink. The man beside you shifts. You read it? He asks. You nod. It's not just about the land, you murmur. He knew they'd come for me, for Elias. He leans in, points to another line, written in older script near the back. You hadn't noticed it before. Ledger fire, church archives, blame pinned on Jonas, set to revoke title before winter council. You go cold. They framed him. He nods. And they thought burning this would bury every trace. You look at Elias bundled in the same pages meant to erase his life, then at the man. Why help me? For the first time, something flickers in his face. I knew your husband once, years ago, before he married. You blink. Were you friends? No, he says quietly. I was the debt collector sent to seize this land. That sentence should break something in you, but it doesn't, because what follows mends more than it wounds. He offered me kindness instead of shame, fed me, let me sleep in the shed during the blizzard of 72, told me if I ever wanted to leave that life, I'd find the path near the broken well. He leans back. I never forgot the path. You sit in silence for a while. Then you reach for a needle, thread, a strip of hide from your pack, and you sew the church deed into the back cover of the ledger, right beside the feather-stitched sigil the man gave you nights before. Now the book is no longer a relic. It's armor. And tomorrow, when the sun crests the ridge, you'll walk into town, not begging, but bearing proof. That fire couldn't silence a birthright, and that women don't vanish when men close doors. Sometimes they rewrite the whole record. The town looks smaller than you remember, not in size, but in consequence. You stand at the edge of the rise with Elias pressed to your chest, wrapped in layers of wool and ink and smoke. The man stands behind you, still unnamed, still watching, but now with a rifle slung low and eyes sharper than frost. The air is quiet, too quiet for morning, until hooves clatter. 3 riders emerge from behind the livery, dusty, armed, and all too familiar. You know the one in front, Deacon Wells, the same man who married you under the chapel's eaves before tearing the page from the record book and calling it premature. His voice carries like a whip. Miss Albright. Not Mrs., not widow. He dismounts slowly, eyes flicking to the bundle in your arms. You've returned under false pretenses. That child's claim is invalid. There's no witness to your marriage, no legal document. You step forward, 1 pace. The man behind you does not move, but he's ready. You pull the ledger from your satchel, smooth, firm, deliberate. The stitched seal gleams in the sun. I've got more than a document, you say. You flip to the page, the burned one. Show the ink that refuses to fade. Jonas wrote this, you say. And this seal was known by your elders long before your ink ever dried. The deacon's jaw tightens. We found no seal on the chapel record. That's because you burned the record, you answer, voice quiet. He looks past you, to the man, and recognition blooms. You? The man steps forward now. I watched you light the fire. Silence. Then, you had no authority. Your own daughter gave me the last page, you interrupt. The one you tried to burn but didn't. You hold up the sealed letter, the one the midwife gave you in the cellar. You haven't opened it until now. With trembling fingers, you break the wax. Inside, her handwriting, clear, formal. I, Margaret Wells, testify that Jonas Wainwright and Mary Albright were wed in full witness under the bell tower of St. Hollow's Chapel 2 weeks before the Ledger fire. I watched the oath. I saw the bloodline mark made. Your voice cracks, but you keep reading. I send this in secret, knowing my father fears what this child might restore. Let the truth reach those who survive the ashes. You hand it to the man. He reads it aloud. No one speaks when he finishes. The deacon turns red, then pale. This means nothing, he mutters. The county seat won't uphold. They won't need to, the man says. Because we will. The rifle comes off his shoulder. He doesn't point it, just lets the weight of it settle. The other riders shift uneasily. You pull Elias closer. Tell them, you say softly. Tell them the baby born in ashes carries the land you tried to claim. The deacon looks at the townsfolk gathering behind shuttered windows and open doors. He sees what he's losing, not just land, but narrative. Because you didn't die in shame, you came back with proof, and they know it. As the deacon backs away, you speak once more, not loudly, just with enough breath to carry. This town won't be built on erasure anymore. The bell overhead doesn't ring, but something shifts in the air, as if the ridge remembers, and writes your name into the wind. The wind that once stung your cheeks now carries your name through the streets, not in reverence, not yet, but in awareness. And that's the first step. Elias breathes easy again, his tiny chest rising in time with yours as you step through the square. But even as doors creak open and whispers chase your footsteps, the danger hasn't passed. The church may have lost its grip on your silence, but it hasn't lost its claws. You reach the courthouse steps by midday. It's a squat building, half-finished, with timber siding warped from last summer's heat. Inside waits the only man with power to record land titles west of the Copper Divide, Clerk Abner Briggs. He was once a friend to Jonas, but when the fire happened, he never came to speak for him, never came to say the deed was real. Now, you step through his door with your baby, your book, and your past. He doesn't rise when you enter, just looks up from his ledger and blinks like you've stepped out of the fog. You, he says softly, I thought. You place the scorched ledger on his desk, then the sewn seal, then the bloodline clause. He stares, reads, then reaches for a stamp, but his hand trembles. There's a bounty on this document, he whispers. You nod. I know. If I mark it valid, I'll be called a traitor, maybe worse. You look him in the eye. You were called a coward already, you say quietly. You just never heard it. That lands. He exhales slowly and places the stamp, heavy, final, onto the margin of the old burned page. The ink bleeds slightly from the heat, but it holds. And just like that, your son owns the land again, Jonas's land, your land. But that night, they come. Not in broad daylight, in shadows, 3 of them, faces wrapped, boots soft. They break through the back door of the tavern where you've been offered a room for the night. You grab Elias, press him against your chest. One man reaches for the ledger on the bedside, but he never touches it. The man, the one who's followed you through storm and silence, steps from the dark with no warning. No gun, just a blade. It glints once, and then the man who reached doesn't move again. The others flee, leave blood on the floor, ink on the sheets. and the sound of your baby's cry echoing into silence. Later, once the shock fades, the protector sits beside the ledger. His hands are red, steady. He looks at you. Then says, for the first time, "My name is Corwin." It's not a name you expected, not native, not settler, just a man's name, simple, given, earned. You offer your hand, not because you need saving, but because you just watched him choose your child's life over his own. He takes it. And in that moment, without vows or oaths or firelight promises, a new ledger begins, not on paper, but between hearts. The snow has started again, soft, slow, like it's falling not from the sky, but from memory. You sit near the hearth of the tavern kitchen, Elias asleep in a sling across your chest. Corwin cleans his blade outside, ritual more than necessity. The smell of blood still lingers, but so does something else. Peace. Earned. Fragile. You open the ledger again, almost by instinct, but it's not the pages that draw you this time. It's the folded slip tucked between them, the one stitched into the back cover by the midwife herself. You'd forgotten it in the rush. Now your fingers trace the fold, soft with age. You break the seal with care. Inside is not a confession, it's a map, drawn by hand, labeled in the midwife's unmistakable script. But the lines don't match any land charted by the county. They follow creeks, burial stones, and old trails carved long before roads. You stare. At the bottom corner is a note, small, personal. If they find her, tell her to go where we were forbidden to kneel. There her name will not be borrowed. It will be blessed. It's signed only. M. You read it twice, then a third time. You remember the midwife's strange prayers, her silence at your questions. The careful way she handled Elias, not like a burden, but like a prophecy. This wasn't just kindness, it was plan. Corwin enters quietly. Snow dusts his shoulders. He sees the open letter. "What is it?" he asks. You show him the map. He goes still, then nods. "I know that place." "You've been there?" "No," he replies, "but my mother spoke of it. A sanctuary, buried when the treaties were broken. It's not on any deed, but it's real." You stare at the ink. The midwife said, "My name would be blessed there." Corwin watches you for a long moment. Then he says the thing that undoes you. Maybe that's where you write the next one. The next name. The next truth. A ledger not of debts, but of survival. You touch Elias's cheek, and for the first time since your wedding, you don't feel like you're proving anything. You feel chosen by a woman who burned pages to save them, by a man who fought without need of reward, by a child who carries fire in his breath, and by a trail older than shame. Tomorrow you'll pack again, but not to run, to reclaim, to bless, to kneel where the world once whispered, "You do not belong," and to whisper back, "I do now." The ride out of town is quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seem to know that something has ended here, something old, brittle, and dressed up like justice. You sit upright in the wagon bed, Elias nestled to your chest, the ledger wrapped tightly beneath him. Corwin walks ahead, one hand resting on the rifle slung across his back. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to, because today the silence feels earned. You reach the foothills by dusk. From here, the path turns narrow, too steep for wheels. Corwin unhooks the mule, helps you dismount. You sling Elias against your body and follow him into the trees. It's a path worn by water and time, not by boots, not recently. The deeper you go, the more the air changes. It smells of moss, of damp wood, and something beneath that, char, like a ghost camp that still smolders. Corwin stops at a ridge overhang. "There," he says. You step beside him. Below lies the ruin, not of a house, of a church. Collapsed beams jut from the earth like ribs. The bell lies split, half buried in mud. Wildflowers grow where pews once stood. "This was never in the papers," Corwin says. "The fire was blamed on lightning, but the lightning didn't leave boot prints, and it didn't spare the ledgers." You step closer, down the slope, careful with every step. You feel it before you touch it. This was where the old names were kept, not just land titles, births, marriages, bloodlines, everything that made someone matter, written, signed, and stored. Until someone wanted to rewrite history. You kneel near the stone foundation, brush back the soil, and there, buried shallow, lies the corner of another book. Waterlogged, half-burned, you dig gently. Pages fall apart in your hands, but one remains. A line in faint ink. Jonas Wainwright wed Mary Albright, April 1871. Witness Margaret Wells. Officiant Reverend M. Green. You laugh quietly, disbelieving. Corwin kneels beside you. "What does it say?" You hand him the page. He reads it, then looks at the child in your arms. "Let them try to erase him now," he murmurs. You look around, and you know this isn't just a graveyard, it's a threshold, one they thought had collapsed with the roof. But you're here. You hold the book, and more importantly, you hold the boy. Elias stirs, blinking up at the sky. You press your lips to his forehead and whisper, "This is yours," not because someone gave it to you, but because someone tried to take it and failed. Corwin helps you up. You walk back toward the trees, but before you go, you leave one thing behind. A single page from the burned ledger placed beneath the broken bell. It flutters once in the wind and stays. The valley holds its breath as you return, not as a fugitive, not as a widow abandoned at the chapel door, but as someone who lived through fire and chose not to disappear. Corwin pitches the canvas shelter between two leaning aspens, where sunlight filters down in coppery threads. It's not a home, not yet, but it's a beginning. The soil here is black with promise. Wild mint curls along the stream banks. Ravens circle overhead, but they don't cry out. You spread a blanket near the fire pit and lay Elias down beside you. He stares up at the clouds, blinking like each one holds a secret. You open the ledger, not to mourn, to write. The page is blank, new, sewn in by your own hand the night before. At the top, you scrawl a date, June 1872. Then, slowly, you add a name, Mary Albright, not as someone's wife, not as a lost cause, but as a mother, as a keeper of land bought with blood and silence. Beneath that, you write Elias Thomas Wainwright. Then, without ceremony or fear, you write the words they tried to deny, inheritant of lot number 3, Ridge Valley, confirmed by surviving seal, fireproof signature, and witness carried in flesh. You pause. Then add one final line. Let this mark not a debt, but a beginning. Corwin returns with water and a pail of yarrow. He kneels beside you, glancing at the page. You ready to stake the boundary? You nod. He hands you 4 stones, painted with the old symbols, 2 birds, 1 broken, 1 flying. Together you walk the ridgeline, place the stones at each corner of the plot Jonas once claimed by hand, not by law. Elias watches from his bundle. When the final stone settles, the wind rises. You swear it carries laughter, not yours, not Corwin's, but someone who never got to see this day. You whisper anyway, just in case Jonas can still hear. We wrote it down, love, and this time, we're the ones keeping the book. Night settles like a shawl across your shoulders, gentle, familiar. The fire burns low, no longer a ward against fear, but a comfort, a heartbeat echoing the one nestled on your chest. Elias dreams in small sighs. Corwin sits across the embers, carving something from cedar. He hasn't said what. He doesn't need to. Silence here means presence, not distance. The sky above stretches wide, stars blinking like they're watching for a name to remember. You whisper it to them. Elias. The trees hold their breath for you, not out of grief, out of reverence. You think of the ledger, sewn shut now, its last page inked not with pain, but with purpose. And you think of the midwife bent and burned by too many secrets, but still willing to cradle new life in the ruins of old debts. You owe her nothing and everything. Tomorrow there will be work, fences to fix, seeds to plant, a cabin to raise from stone and will. But tonight there is this, a baby sleeping, a man who chose to stay, and a woman no longer waiting outside locked doors. Only inside them now, warm, kept, home. The fire cracks one last time. You look out across the valley and whisper, "We remember you, Jonas, and now they will remember us." Soft winds carry the words, and somewhere deep beneath the ground, the ashes smile.